Is Lies of P going to be the next big game? Well, shorter answer is, I'm gonna be honest with you, probably not.
Yikes.
Yeah, I know, there's been this huge marketing push, really promoting the game, making it seem like it's going to be the next big Soulsborne game that isn't developed by FromSoft, and so Lies of P kind of has this big reputation coming in with it, despite the fact that the game isn't already out. And on top of that too, you always have to be a little bit careful with marketing pushes, because, well, you never know how things are going to go. Here's looking at you, Callisto Protocol. You dumped a lot of money into your marketing. But okay, let's talk about Lies of P and what I thought about it, because I've played a lot of the different Soulsborne games, and on top of that too, well, it's pretty clear where this game takes inspiration from. Yeah, you could say Pinocchio, but also too a certain, I don't know, steampunky, gothic, in a dark city, linear, Bloodborne? Yeah, maybe? I don't know, probably. Yes, that's 100% Bloodborne. But let's break down some of the things that I did notice actually in the demo itself, which is live right now. I've gone through the demo 3 times now, beating it to completion, and here are just some of the things that I noticed. So let's start things out with combat and talking about how Lies of P tries to innovate the Soulsborne formula and why I ultimately think that it might not work, well, to be seen. Well, you have all of your typical Soulsy type of a combat, you know, light attacks, heavy attacks, special attacks, and then rolling as well as guarding. They put a very heavy emphasis on guarding, which I think is supposed to stylistically make it stand out from a lot of the FromSoft games, because as you know, rolling was kind of the thing to do. Essentially, if you just guard at the perfect moment before an enemy attacks you, you can get a perfect block in where you don't lose any durability on your weapon, or don't lose any health from the block itself, which is fantastic, but it will build towards this bar called Groggy, where if you do a heavy attack on the enemy, then you can do a critical strike, and that's kind of the heavy emphasis there. Similar to Bloodborne, there's a much higher emphasis at kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of combat and really just going forwards and attacking with all of your might, and then timing your blocks so that you can make those perfect counters to not really lose any life but continue your frontal assault. And while this is a little bit of a neater idea, I don't think that it really sticks as well, just because the timing on the actual guarding feels a little bit difficult to really just nail down. Maybe that's just a skill problem on my end, but it didn't feel really perfect. And on top of that too, there was a very high punishment ceiling for kind of missing one of these blocks. What can happen is you will inevitably lose a bunch of HP off of it, and if you can't escape in time based off of the rolls, then you pretty much just kind of die. On top of that too, the rolls are kind of nerfed. It didn't feel like you had those picture perfect frame rate. It didn't feel like you had that picture perfect invincibility frames every single time you rolled. More or less when I rolled, it felt like there was a little bit of it, but generally speaking, it didn't seem really worth it. For me, this made things a little bit more difficult, because without the feature of just completely rolling away, you really have to be able to read your enemies a lot better, and I know that that's trying to emphasize a bit more skill in the actual combat itself. But if you just mess up by like a little bit, it can be extremely punishing, especially given the fact that you are losing HP every single time you just miss a perfect block. One feature though to combat that I actually really enjoyed was there's durability on all of your weapons, and so mid-combat you need to actually stop and then use a little grinder on your elbow thing to be able to get your durability for your weapon all the way back up. I actually think that this is a fantastic move from them, because it really just added another thing to really think about when you're in some of these tougher boss scenarios. You know, you could be just like wailing on a guy and then your weapon durability is gonna run out, and so you need to back off in order to really just sharpen up your blade and get ready to go once again. They also added a thing where if you use up all of your healing items, if you do enough damage to other enemies, then you get one back. And I actually think that that's kind of smart as well, because it does encourage a lot more of that aggressive playstyle. Lies of P, they just want Pinocchio to just go ham on all these types of puppets. Okay, moving on, let's talk about the customization here, because I think that this is where it really is going to set itself apart from a lot of the Soulsborne-y type of stuff, and it honestly has the most potential out of all the different parts of this game. Of course, there's the classic level up, you know, you kill enough enemies, you get enough currency, you go and then you level up and life is good. But now you can actually modify your weapons based on the handle and the blade that is involved. Well, this really allows you to make sure that you have the best weapon for your build, whether or not you're going like strength, dexterity, or intelligence. What's cool about this is it also shakes up what the fable abilities are of each of the individual weapons. This allows for a little bit more customization, still making sure that you can fit your build, but you can really just hone in on what abilities you really want to use. And so I think that that's a little bit innovative, and I think that that's a smart way to kind of expand upon the formula, which Elden Ring kind of started to get in there with the weapon arts. And then of course, on top of all of this, there's actually a whole skill tree that you can unlock called the P organ.
Huh?
now realizing that they decided to call it the P organ, which I'm pretty sure is the puppet organ, but like, somebody, they must have done this on purpose, right? If they didn't do this on purpose, somebody's got to tell them that, you know, there's another organ that starts with P. We're not going to get into it. This is actually really cool because it shows a lot of promise in being able to spec out a Pinocchio that really just matches your individual playstyle. You can upgrade certain things, like I saw being able to do a double dodge. It increases the length of the groggy meter. And while the rest of the skill tree was hidden because this was just locked behind a demo, I think that there could be some real potential here in really smoothing out the gameplay. All of the stuff that I talked about combat in the previous section of this video was just based on what I saw in the demo, but of course, as you level things up, there might be a little bit more options to really smoothen out some of those difficulties that I was running into. But where I think that the game actually suffers the most is, well, it's not going to be the perfect Soulsborne game. Matter of fact, this is coming out after Elden Ring just more or less perfected the Soulsborne-y type of stuff, a lot of quality of life improvements to make the game that much more smoother. And when you play Lies of P, you can see that the inspiration comes from these older Soulsborne games because things as simple as jumping are still really technically complex. Like, you need to be running and then you need to crouch and then you can do a full jump. Like, that doesn't need to exist anymore. On top of that too, you know, in Elden Ring, you could just go back to an Ember and you could level up there, save and teleport wherever you needed to go. But for Lies of P, you need to go back to the base every single time, which just locks you behind a couple extra load screens, which quite frankly, just doesn't need to be there in the modern age of Soulsborne games. I'm a little bit worried that by trying to mimic some of these older Soulsborne games, it's keeping itself into a box. There are a couple of innovations that Lies of P are introducing, specifically in the customization, that I think are really smart, but I'm hoping that it doesn't get grogged down by some of the artifacts of Soulsborne-esque games. What also makes this game a little bit more difficult is the graphics on it. And I don't want to be that guy like, ooh, look how pretty my game is. That's what's important here, because I do think that it does come down to gameplay. But keep in mind, just 1 month after Lies of P is going to be launching in September, Lords of the Fallen is coming out in October, and it's being run on Unreal Engine 5. Of course, we haven't seen any trailers or gameplay or anything like that, but it does look much better than Lies of P in just a technical masterpiece level. And so when you kind of tie all of these different things together, Lies of P is a very solid Soulsborne clone, but it doesn't feel like it is going to be the next game that is going to define the genre, and all these innovations are going to last and it's going to just completely change the world. And I think that that's going to be really important here, because the marketing of this game really is amping it up, but I want to make sure that people are setting their expectations properly. This is still going to be a very good game, don't get me wrong. It's also on Xbox Game Pass day one, so you know that a lot of people are going to be dipping in and trying this thing out. But unless they're really going to do something wacky or, you know, make themselves stand out, this is going to be just a game that people played, had a great time with, and are going to move on from. If they do want to go the wacky route though, because I think that there's a lot of potential there, given that the source material is Pinocchio, I think that would really make this game stand out quite a bit more. But anyways, that's what I think about Lies of P. I've played the demo a bunch. That's where I'm basing all of my opinions off of. But let me know if you agree with this in the comments down below, and like to subscribe for more of this type of content. I kind of want to dip in and, you know, talk about more video games like this in a little bit more of a weekly show format. I don't know. We'll figure it out. There's ideas, but yeah, Lies of P. Interesting game. Would recommend you to check it out regardless when it launches if you do have Xbox Game Pass, because I think it's going to be quite swell and a fun experience. Okay, that's it. Bye, everyone.